dance for joy or lust or anger.
Welcome to Sensible Secondhand Classics, the series where we look at nostalgic and normally practical cars that are over 15 years old that you can buy for a budget of between £1,000 and £5,000. Although in the case of this car, perhaps that's a bit of an underestimate. Anyway, this is a 1985 Nissan Cherry Europe, also known as the Alfa Romeo Arna, and it is the rarest car I've ever driven in my entire life. But is it any good? Should you care? Let's find out, shall we? So, the story of the Alfa Romeo Arna and Nissan Cherry Europe is probably more interesting in some ways than actually driving the car itself. In the late 1970s, Alfa Romeo wanted to replace the Alfa Sud, and they actually had a car already in development for that, 33, which was a bit more luxurious and high specification than the Alfa Sud. But they felt that actually the Italian public needed something that was more akin to the Alfa Sud to remain at the bottom of the range. But there was a problem. They had no money. So they had to find a partner who was willing to go in with them on developing the new car. And in the late 70s, they started talks with Nissan, who said, well, in about 1982, we're going to be releasing a car called the N12 Cherry, called the Pulsar in many other parts of the world, and perhaps you'd like to make a version of that. So it wasn't really the way that, that Alfa had much of a choice. The Italian government owned them. They weren't owned by Fiat until 1986. And there was either this joint venture with Nissan or nothing, in which case the Alfa Sud replacement wouldn't really have happened. I mean, the F33 in many ways was the replacement, but the car to slot in underneath the 33 wouldn't have happened. And so in 1980 they signed a joint agreement, Alfa Romeo Nissan Auto Veicoli, which basically just means Alfa Romeo Nissan automobiles, really, that sort of thing. It's not actually that exciting, but it sounds good. Not that I pronounced it particularly well. So yes, this car uses a lot of components from the Alfa Sud. It's not got the inboard disc brakes, but it has got similar 5-speed gearbox. It's also got the engine from an Alfa Sud, this 1.2 flat-form boxer unit, developing this car 63 horsepower. I think it's a PS figure actually. Later versions of the Arna and the Cherry Europe used a 68 brake horsepower engine from 1985 for a 1.2. There's also a 1.3. The 1.3 is very rare in this country, it only sold as an Arna, and that developed either 71 brake horsepower or 86 brake horsepower after 1985. The really quick one though is the 95 horsepower version, the GTI for Cherry Europe, or TI for the Arna. The Cherry Europe was actually the first model to be made. The first example started coming off production lines in 1983, even before the Arna had been released at Frankfurt Motor Show, which was a little bit later in the year. And actually August 1983 was when the Cherry Europe went on sale in this country. Cherry Europes are only sold in Austria, Spain, and a very small number in Malta. There will be only 5 doors made. All the rest of Cherry Europes are 3 doors. With the Arnas, they appeared in this country later, much later than Cherry Europes, not until 1985, or rather 85 model year actually, I think also 84. And they were marketed until 86. This is actually quite a late Cherry Europe in terms of a timeline. They really stopped making too many of them by early 85. And the latest one of those that we're aware of was on the C plate. With the Arnas, there were some sold into 1987, and in 87 was when the factory closed entirely. New factory wasn't the same as the factory where the Alfa stood. Actually, final assembly did take place in the Alfa plant, but the one at Prato de Serra that Alfa and Nissan had made on their own, which was a short distance away from the old Alfa factory, was where the sort of main assembly took place. I don't know why they needed to do assembly in two different factories, but you know, never mind. It's been a day that I've been looking forward to for a long time, viewers, and I'm not disappointed at all. Got some noisy birds in a tree somewhere, so I do apologise, but we'll have to carry on. You just won't see another one of these unless, well, there's another one of these on the road, a GTI, there's one Arna on the road, and that's it, so you won't see them. So ultra rare and in absolutely amazing condition. This particular car was restored in 2020 and 2021. Its first real outing was Festival Exception in 2021, where I originally would have seen this. It's also been at the NEC. Chap who owns this, it's called David, and he's an Alfisti. He's very into his Alfas. And of course this really is one. We've got Alfa badges aplenty, particularly under the bonnet. I think this does look better than the standard N12 Cherry. No disrespect to the N12 Cherry. I'm in the Datsun Owners Club, which deals for Nissans and Datsuns before 1995, and you know, they actually are pretty good cars. The styling, I think, of these is just very, you know, normal for the time. It's similar to, I don't know, something like a C10 Specialty Colt that came out the next year. It's also similar, I suppose, in some ways to an A82 Toyota Corolla that came out in 1982, and in the same kind of general vein as all sorts of other things. I don't know, Mark III Escort, Mark I Astra, that kind of thing. But I think the changes that they made to this car, the front and the rear, they do make it look better than the standard N12 Cherry. Let's have a look actually in the boot first. We'll open this door and pull the lever, because that's the only way you can actually get into the boot. You can't put the key in. You can on a standard N12 Cherry, but the thing is, this has the rear panel from the Nissan Langley, which was a sort of high specification Pulsar. Most of these cars around the world were sold as Pulsar. The Cherry was a name ironically used in Europe for both this one and the normal N12, but this is the rear panel from the Nissan Langley, which is like a higher specification car on the same platform. And so there's no keyhole. Unique bumpers as well for the Arna or the Cherry Europe. See, like Alfa Romeo wiper on there. So there we go. There's David's little thing there for Festival Exceptional back in the day. I think we can open up this and see where the spare wheel is. I think it's under here. Yeah, it's under there. Excellent. Still got the stamping on it. Unique thing as well with these, it's the little panels here on the sides of the parcel shelf. Again, the parcel shelf is in two pieces, and it's unique to the Arna and Cherry Europe. You can lift it up like this as well. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can. High sill, but then, you know, C10 Mitsubishi Colt is exactly the same as this. That also has quite a high sill and has a very similar sort of rear profile to the hatch. Again, I cannot believe the condition of this car and the fact that I have been, you know, allowed to drive this. It's bonkers, really. When it's something so rare and so kind of unusual. But I've been offered a go, but I have, so I'm not going to complain. But we'll just get on with what we need to do. And we'll actually get in the side here before I get the door locked off. Not going to be difficult to replace. There we go. Now, I thought the dashboard in these was unique to the Arna and the Cherry Europe, but it turns out that this is incredibly similar, if not identical, to a standard N12 Cherry dash. This one being a lower spec one, we don't actually get the rev counter and also the temperatures in Fahrenheit. Predominantly, the Celsius, which I'm used to in most cars, is actually on the inside. So there we go. Only got 38,000 miles. Top bit typical 1980s Japanese car. The N12 Cherries came out in this country a year before this one. This came out in 1983. I think August 83 these were launched in this country, before the Arna. And they've just taken what is actually an Alfa steering column and put a Nissan badge in the middle. You can just remove this, and David has just shown me, and put an Alfa logo there if you want. This turns the other way from what you'd expect. You start the car this way as opposed to that way, which is very odd. Alfa Romeo gear lever, same one as used on the Alfa 90. Pedals are really strange, like, you know, because the floor pan of this is different from a standard N12 Cherry, because of the front suspension and everything. The pedals are not, wheel-arch intrusion is quite crazy. The pedal should be here, but it's actually here. Sure, you'll get used to it after a while. Then we've got very typical 1980s Japanese heater controls with the sliders. Has light switches here. That is for the rear wiper, fog lamps. You actually twist this for the wipers. Fortunately, we don't need those today. But they're actually the conventional way around for the European market, as opposed to you know, being you know, the indicator on the right, which is what I imagine the N12 Cherries had as standard. Rear heated window is there. You twist this to put the lights on like that. Same thing with the wipers, which is fine. Glove box, do me secret mission documents actually fit in there? I don't think they're going to, viewers. We're going to try anyway, because, you know, we've come so far. What? The rarest car I've ever driven in my entire life, and I can't even get my secret mission documents in there. That is disappointing. Also disappointing is the fact that there's no door bins at all. So I don't know what I'm going to do with my secret mission documents. That is a bit of a problem. This is the sunroof equipped version. You could also get a non-sunroof version. This one's by Tudor Webasto, which is interesting. We probably won't be opening that actually, because it would be very noisy when we go back for a drive. Yeah, this door panel as well is unique to the Cherry Europe and the Arna. It's not the same as an N12 Cherry one. Fashioned in Italy, and an exposed screw head because it's the 1980s. We also got the internally adjustable mirrors. The main difference really between this and a GTI model is rev counter and the seats. Most other things are quite similar. Right, because this is an episode of Sensible Secondhand Classics, I shall have to get in the back, and Mr. Manning from Matty's Cars channel won't not allow me to get away with that, so let me just move some things around and get in the back seat. I think it's going to be quite cramped. Okay, weirdly this car's got two keys, and it's just a standard they come with two keys. That's the door key, standard sort of 80s Nissan key, and that's the ignition key, because, well, the ignition and steering column are off a completely different car, really. Right, let's pull this. Oh, we can go forward a bit. It's going to be a little bit easier for me to get in than it was for Ian Seabrook when he drove that GTI. I don't think there's going to be a lot more room in here though. I have a feeling it's going to be a bit cramped. Yeah, my head right up against the roof. Nice headlining, very typically 80s. Reminds me of the one that used to be in my mother's old Volvo 240 actually. We've got enormous places to put stuff, but the secret mission document is still not going in there. Or there. Something else might be. The Arna was sold with a 5-door version. In fact, the only Arna remaining in this country is a 5-door. The Cherry Europes were mainly only sold in 3 doors, but there was a very small batch for 5 doors right, it went to Malta. So this is sort of the interior, but you got no seat belts because they were actually not required at this time. They weren't required to be fitted as standard until 1987. So whoever bought this car new did not get the seat belts. And there are mounting points for them, you can see that there, but they're just not fitted. You also get some nice quarter lights, which is good. Yeah, I mean, if I don't trap my phone in there, which is sensible, to pull that out, there we go. And then pull this back, what's it like? Ah, it's alright actually with leg room. The front passenger might be a bit taller enough to move it back, but it's not quite as bad as I thought it would be in here. It could be worse, I suppose. Maybe at some point I'll get to review a standard N12 Cherry and I'll tell you what it's like in the back of that as well. Right, that's enough of that. Let's have a look under the bonnet and see what the major change to this car is over a standard N12 Cherry. So, rather than a Nissan E-Series engine, which is what the majority of the N12 Cherries, if not all of them, would have got, we have the good old Boxer engine, flat 4, from an Alfa Sud. This one developed 63 horsepower because this car was actually made in 1984. The slightly later ones for 85 would have developed 68 horsepower. So we've got Alfa Romeo cylinder heads on there, like that. Alfa Romeo oil filter, Alfa Romeo electrics, Alfa Romeo build plate, Alfa Romeo recommended lubricants, and there we go, the warning sticker for Alfa Romeo as well. So there we go, lots and lots of nice Italian bits on here, and then a single carb on this with a clover leaf on it. But unlike the GTI version, which has only got one carb, the GTI, despite its name, was actually twin carbs. I just cannot believe it's in such nice condition. It's just unbelievable. I imagine the only reason why David didn't win the Concours de l'Ordinaire in 2021 at Festival Exceptional was because another Cherry Europe for GTI, you would have seen Ian Seabrook and Mr. Richardson Furious Driving try in 2021, was because that car, the GTI, won the very first event in 2014. Otherwise, probably he would have won with this. Grill's very strange. It's only got sort of, the actual paint on two sides of it rather than four, which is really weird. As you can see, the top bit's not painted, but the right-hand side and the bottom are. Then with these nice unique indicators and headlamps. The whole thing's further forward than it would be on standard N12 Cherry. You can see where actually these would have been much further back, but because they had to fit the radiator underneath here, it actually stands a bit prouder, and therefore the bumpers are larger as well. But actually, it's a nicer look, in my opinion, than the standard N12 Cherries. Although they're good cars, actually. The typical styling of the era, but I just think these are a bit more stylish, really. Yes, in fact, it's so stylish, I'm going to go out for another drive. So yes, introduced in this country in the summer of 1983, sold until sort of early 85 for the Cherry Europe, and then autumn 84 until 86 for the Arna. Just not a success, really. I mean, the thing is that this is actually quite a nice car to drive. It's actually quite good. This is not a terrible car at all. I have driven some truly terrible cars. I've driven a first generation Nissan Juke, that was pretty bad. I've driven a 1990 Ego 45A, that was worse. And I've driven a City Rover, and that was, I think, the worst of all. This is not a bad car. It's got nice steering. The engine's not particularly powerful in this one. I mean, the GTI is a bit faster. 5-speed gearbox is a bit recalcitrant, like a lot of Alfa Romeo gearbox at the time. I've driven an Alfa Romeo 90, and at the time I drove that in 2020. It's the same car that Mr. Richardson has driven as well, actually, because a friend of mine, Mr. Coleman, owned the Alfa 90. I thought actually that was the rarest car I'd ever driven. It also had a gearbox that's a bit recalcitrant, very similar feel in some ways, but completely different to the transaxle in the rear and rear-wheel drive. This is front-wheel drive with a Boxer engine. But yeah, this feels really tight, and together at this low mileage. Front suspension in this is different from the N12 Cherry this is based on. Floor pan's actually different as well to accommodate things like the pedal box and the steering column. Someone behind me wants to go faster than me in a purple Skoda. 0 to 60 in this is about 14 seconds, so I don't think we're going to be achieving that. But I can't believe it. It rides a little bit on the jiggly side. Paddling though is quite good. There's a lot of nice feeling through the steering. I've heard people say that these cars are not very nice to drive, the steering's not very communicative, but other people say that they're great. So, having driven it myself, what do I think about that? I think this is a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying this. I'd like a little bit more power, but if there are 2 Cherry Europes on the road in this country and 1 Arna, how on earth are you going to ever be able to sort of replicate this experience? You just can't. I'm such a privileged person to be able to have driven this, and I can't thank David who owned his car enough for giving me the opportunity to do so, an opportunity which very, very few people will ever get again, because the attrition rate for these is dreadful. The Arna that Jeremy Clarkson destroyed on Clarkson's car years in 2000, a deregistration 5-door model. At the time, there were only 340 Arnas actually on the road. The Cherry Europes would have been even less than that. So, you know, people should care about these. Obviously, if you walk into a showroom and there's 3 different Nissans of the same size available in, say, 1985 when this car was registered, although it was built in 1984, you're going to get a bit confused, aren't you? You're going to say, well, I don't really know. I mean, we've got the V11 Sunny, we could get one of those, same chassis actually as a N12 Cherry, you get one of those as well. And then you've got this very, very bizarre thing, the Cherry Europe, that just basically turned up at Alfa dealers on transporters unannounced, effectively in 1983 when they sold the first ones. And nobody knew what to do with them. And I'm not really surprised about that, because I wouldn't know what to do either. But I'm just very grateful that the original person who bought this car in 1985 actually decided to go for this, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to drive it. A lot of the facts in this video have been inspired by a channel called Roadster Life, who is a gentleman from Italy. He's written a book actually, I think it's called Alfa Romeo Arna, the True Story. I've yet to read that, but it sounds fascinating. The thing is about these Cherry Europes and Arnas is that I'm not sure Alfa Romeo ever made any money on them. Currency fluctuations and the strength of the yen meant that by the time the cars are in production, the first ones in production were the Cherry Europes in 1983, it sort of meant that with the assembly cost and everything like that, a brand new factory that Nissan had financed, I'm not sure they really made much money, and they only sold 59,000 of these, 7,000 of which were Cherry Europes, and they planned to sell 60,000 a year, and that didn't happen. Once Fiat bought Alfa Romeo in 1986, the joint venture with Nissan was very, very quickly dissolved, and the last ones in production, which was the Vianas, Cherry Europes, were discontinued really principally by 85. There were a very small number of them made in 1986, and the thing was just quietly forgotten, and Alfa kept on making the 33. So should you consider an Alfa Arna or a Nissan Cherry Europe as a sensible second-hand classic with your hard-earned budget of between £1,000 and £5,000? Well, that's a bit of a moot point. There are 2 Cherry Europes on the road. There's 1 Arna, and the Arna was one that recently changed hands, and it was about £9,000. So we might have exceeded the budget, but we might not. It's difficult to value something like this. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment below, and we shall see you again soon for probably some more reasonably priced nostalgic motoring with something that's a bit more common.